Yo, that sound right there can only be one thing. Uncuffed. Coming with episode number 4. Holy smokes, man. We got a little momentum going on right here. Episode 4? Wow, okay. Alright. Let's do this. Although I will tell you right now, I'm in kind of a somber mood, despite it all. I was recently asked by one of our listeners, as far as what are some of the fond memories you remember in regards to your time as a police officer. I spent almost 20 years out there fighting the bad guy, I guess. On the mean streets of San Leandro. And so I was asked to kind of talk about it, and I'm quite sure that there's some heads over there at my old department right now who are kind of sweating bullets and stuff. What's it gonna say? What's it gonna talk about? Yeah, they're kind of nervous and stuff like that because they tried to pull a fast one recently, and it just is not gonna fly. So, my response to all that is going to come at a later time, maybe one of the other later episodes and stuff. This is episode 4, man. I ain't giving y'all episode 4. What's going to come is going to come probably on episode 17 or something like that, I'll save it for then. But, I was asked about my time as a police officer and my thoughts and stuff. And the way my brain works, it works systematically. In order for me to kind of really, really get into the, all the fun stories, the car chases, the fights and stuff, and the camaraderie, being out there with your fellow officers and really, really iron out a case that was very challenging, upsetting, and, but in the end prevailing. It's tough. I mean, it's one of the toughest jobs in the world. And if anybody ever asks my thoughts as far as do NFL players deserve the multi-million-dollar contracts that they get, I can honestly say no. If anybody deserves a multi-million-dollar contract, it's a freaking police officer, man. From the start of their shift to the end of their shift, they are going up against people they've never met ever before. But those same people are trying to take their heads off or do anything they can to, fool the officer or get away or, hurt the officer in a lot of these cases and stuff nowadays. And, and we're talking about 10, 12 hours of shifts of dealing with that stuff nowadays, especially now that the courts have given all the rights to the freaking suspect. They feel emboldened to act the freaking fool. So things have changed stuff. So, I don't miss that part, and obviously there's some good things about being a police officer. I got some great stories. But at the same time, they always reminds me, because I think about the guy every day. It always reminds me of, my fellow coworker who, was shot and killed in the line of duty. And then all of a sudden, then I have to sit down and kind of put things in perspective, because by rights, he still should be here, and he should have retired with me. We should have retired together. We came in together, so we should have retired together in my eyes. But that's not how it panned out. I don't think that either one of us would have thought that our careers would have gone the way that they did. But I think anybody who starts off and takes on the challenge of being a police officer, I think they got to just kind of throw away any kind of set expectations and just kind of put a blindfold on and just trust their training that they received in the academy, and then just kind of whatever happens, do the best of their ability to be the best person in the end. That's really all you can kind of do nowadays and stuff, because like I said, a lot of the police abilities have been taken from them, and it's a very, very difficult job to do nowadays. So yeah, I believe they deserve a multi-million-dollar contract. These other guys are getting money for freaking playing a game. This is real life stuff. If you get shot, that's for real. This isn't like fun and games and stuff like that. And so it's very sad when I think about Officer 298. He was a badge number ahead of me. I'm 299. Officer Nels Daniel Niemi, or Niemi, depending on who's saying his last name. He will be forever memorialized at the police department, San Leandro PD. His photo, his likeness, everything is etched in a fantastic memorial in front of the police department. Him and the other the three officers who have fallen in the line of duty, and that was a memorial that was very, very difficult for me to walk past. Just because I started out with the guy. He was shot and killed on July 25th, 2005, and and so when July hits, it's always even harder to kind of deal with, because you know that his anniversary of his death is just right around the corner. And so it's one of those things where, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to dedicate an episode to Mr. Dan Niemi, mainly because on the 25th, you're going to see memorials coming out of just the kind of like the vanilla standard. He dedicated his life for his profession. He was a upstanding officer who was shot and killed and died too soon. That's true. But I knew the guy on a whole nother level, and I don't feel bad for sharing the stories that I know personally about Dan, because I know for a fact he would want everybody to know his true makeup, because the dude was it was quite the joy to work with him, but at the same time it was like him and I were like brothers. We came in at the same time. We went through the whole application process. We had to do the fitness tests, the psych test, the written test, all the tests that goes with being a police officer. All those were obviously tough, but him and I were, and a third officer, we were fortunate enough to get hired, and by San Leandro Police, and we were sent to the police academy to do our thing. If you picture Dan, he doesn't look like a cop at all. Spiky brown hair. He came from either the technology field, and he was dealing with computers and all that stuff. And so that was back when the crash of back in the days happened, all the computer systems and stuff like that, and all the stores and the software systems and stuff were just really kind of went down a downsizing thing. I think those .comer type time frames and stuff like that, when it went from like the kings of the world to like, oh wait a minute, just kidding, we really don't have a plan. Then everything started falling apart, especially down here in the California, the Silicon Valley areas really took a beating big time when all that went down. So Dan, who knew nothing about that type of world, decided, you know what, I'm gonna be a cop. He wants to do things to help out with the use of the world and all that stuff, help keep them in line, want to do his part to keep society safe, and it was very, very honorable for him to have done that. So, but for me, it was slightly different, because my father was a police officer. So as a youngster, I saw police in action. I heard the stories. I knew that there's bad people out there on a daily basis that my dad had to deal with. Once he got almost killed in a car crash by a drunk driver who ran a red light and smashed into his police car, just broke both of his legs, bent up the police car to where people were amazed that he even walked out or got out of there alive, because the whole front end of the police car was all smashed in. I was young at the time, And so I really didn't understand the magnitude of what just happened, but I just remember going to the hospital and seeing my dad all smashed up, and his face was all damaged as well, and both legs were in full casts, and he didn't look good. So, but he bounced back, and he was able to return to work, and albeit with two, like, not the best legs, but he went back out there because he was dedicated to that career. And so Dan Niemi was the same type of person, but again, he had no real true exposure to the real dangers, in my opinion, that come with being out in the streets as a police officer. So, good dude, solid, liked communicate, conversations were dear to him, kind of a warm smile, but at the same time, he had that look in his eyes where he was kind of like, what is this guy really up to? So him and I, once we became, it was official that we were hired, the three of us all got our stuff together. Actually, Dan and I went down to the uniform shop together because we're going to be academy mates, and we picked our gun belts out, our uniforms, our boots, all that stuff. It was like the best day ever because we were like I said, we were like brothers, and we were there trying to be there for each other. I didn't know too much about the gun belts and stuff like that, and then Dan, he was a gun instructor, so he knew all about all that stuff and everything. So he was very professional. He was a little bit older than me, so he was more mature and all that stuff. So all that stuff wasn't too he wasn't too in awe of the process of going out and picking out your gun belts and all those different things. So I guess he was prepared for that. So we go to the academy together, the Alameda County Sheriff's Department Academy, and things were good. I mean, we both, all three of us. And when let me just go back, because the third one ended up not making it out of the academy. It was he ran into like some rough patch roads and stuff. The studying, the assignments, it's very, very difficult. It's 7 months of grinding every day with laws, policies, different techniques. You have to learn from square one what it takes to be a police officer, and then at the same time you're out there doing PT on a daily basis and stuff. So unfortunately our third officer didn't make it. So that became where Dan and I really, really, really had to connect and have each other's back, because, if you're at the academy, everybody knows that Sheriff's Academy runs the show, because that's where their headquarters is. So you got like 40 plus sheriff's deputies and only like a couple here and there of whatever local city police departments are, and you kind of have to stick together. And so it's just me and Dan. Just so you guys know, Dan's white, I'm black, and that only kind of plays a factor down the road. In the academy, it really didn't play a factor because we balanced each other out. He was not very athletic. I was. So when it came to be PT, I kind of hung in there with even though we were like doing like 7-mile hikes in like 100-degree weather up some hills and carrying these big old logs that would make the biggest lumberjack happy. And here we are carrying these things on our backs or on our shoulders up this hill, like we're Navy SEALs or something like that. But police business is paramilitary, so you have to get ready. And so Dan would do the best he could. But a lot of times when we do our runs, he would fall out. But he made up for everything with his very witty, very intellectual personality. It was very easy to see very early on that he loved the debate. He took took joy in pushing people's buttons, and he was in some ways he was kind of a jerk, but that was part of his personality. He loved being looked upon as the bad guy or the jerk because, I guess that maybe it was like he kept the mood going forward instead of this like dry, like near like incapacitated type feel in your squad room, because we've just got our butt kicked. We just had to run this 7-mile hike, or scenarios are just so overbearing and just like your brain's like about ready to self-destruct and stuff. Everybody's all quiet and like about ready to fall asleep because they're worn out from the day's activities, and here's Dan in the back just talking trash and just kind of being funny. And it was all intellectual, very, very great, candid, and very, pointed stuff. It made sense when you just sat there and listened to him, but just like sometimes just like, dude, will you shut up? And they look at me, Kenny, will you get your San Leandro officer to shut up? And it was just like, dude, I can't do anything with him. Just, try to tune him out. But everything always evens out because if I was the cool kid at that time, everything changed when we did firearms training, because holy smokes, that's Dan's niche right there. And he put on a show. He went from being somebody who was like, who would fall out on our PT drills and our running, all that stuff, to someone who just like had a cape and was flying around shooting stuff blindly and upside down with the gun in one hand, and just kind of like doing stuff that just made no sense, like making the bullets curve around the barrier and then getting the suspect and stuff, and everybody's looking like, holy smokes, clapping, and and he just made it look easy. And for me, I that was the first time I started shooting, so I struggled. I'm not afraid to admit it. I struggled when we got to our shooting block, and but it was fun to see. I stood back and let him have his moment, let him shine, and it was he put on a show. Dan Niemi, I could still see it in my mind, like it just happened the other day, of how awe-stricken I was when he performed out there on our shooting courses and stuff. It was freaking amazing. It was beautiful, and so we kind of use that kind of like as like a friendly competition. One day I'm like I'm prevailing and I'm doing well, kicking butts in our scenarios, and kind of people are enjoying some of the stories I might say. I might say some Raider stories and stuff like that that they might want to hear, and then that would probably make Nels jealous, and he'd sit back there all like sniffy or whatever, like whatever, man, and and kind of maybe make a comment and stuff to get people to kind of like get distracted, whatever, and stuff. So anyway, and then the next day I'd come into the academy, and he's holding court, and he's talking about all these different things he learned in the technology world. So as young police officers, you gotta kind of have a backup plan just in case it doesn't work out. So he really is teaching these kids, the second skills that might be needed out there on the streets and stuff, and out there in society. And so a lot of people were listening. It was great. And then I had to sit in the background like, why are they talking to him? Why are they listening to him and stuff like that? And so it was a bit of rivalry that him and I had, and it started in the academy. But it was beautiful. It was our thing. Like I said, if I skip ahead and I go up to where when we finally when we graduated from the academy and went to our police department, everybody started taking it the wrong way, because we would still get into our snips back and forth. He was on one shift, I was on the other shift and stuff. And it seemed to me at the time that he was getting the better shift. And instead of hauling butt from call to call to call as you're being trained and you're on your field training program, he's like having lunch with some of the sergeants and the other senior officers, and he's holding court at the at whatever restaurant, and just people are laughing and just enjoying his company. I'm saying, wait a minute, that's what? How's he being nice to these guys and stuff? How do they not know that he could be a jerk sometimes too? But that was part of his charm. And so, for a minute there, it was kind of strange. Kind of threw me off a little bit because I'm busting my butt as like this rookie and I'm not getting anything handed to me. But if I, in hindsight, I could have been right there in the same boat. Had I used my Raider background, which is what everybody at the police department was expecting. I was hearing stories that where people were, trying to switch their field training program so that they can train me specifically so that they can tell people, hey, I'm training the former Oakland Raider, Kenny Shedd type stuff, so they can brag about that stuff. And like, wait, that's how petty and shallow is that? But that's how it worked and everything. And so, in hindsight, had I graduated from the academy, come in with this like freaking ego, about the size of freaking the department building, like I was the shit, because Oakland Raiders were hot at that time, doing some damage out there on the football field and everything. Right around that time is when I think they started going to playoffs and all that stuff too. And they were the hot ticket out there. Yeah, I could have used it, but I don't have that ability in me. I don't focus on using people or using other different aspects of something to get what I'm trying to get. My only game plan is to utilize my natural skills and to get better at what I'm trying to do, because that's part of the challenge. It never occurred to me that other people like the fast track or other people like the be handed stuff, or that good old boy network actually existed where they give handshakes and that secret handshake to some people and other people don't get it. And, I never really kind of understood that, or really that wasn't my style. So had I spoken that language and done the things that way, I would have been ushered down the fast track myself. But in the end, that's not real. That's fake stuff. And you know what? That's just not how I roll. But Dan was being taken care of in a certain ways. Maybe it's because he was a gun range master and he owned a gun shop and they were getting good deals on ammunition or whatever. But all I know is that every time I turn around, he was getting accolades where I'm just like, I know for a fact that cat didn't pull over 3 stolen vehicles in 1 year, arrest those people, and then get another 13 stolen vehicles that are unoccupied to be able to get put on a board and a plaque with your name saying 10851 stolen vehicle award goes to this particular person. I don't know how that happened. To this date, I don't know how he got on a plaque for that year award for people who have got their 10851 pin, but he was. And I'll just leave that there. But he knew people. People took care of him. But like I said, no one really knew that was part of him and I's connection. We had a love-hate thing going on, so he was jealous of me in some things. I was jealous of him. I was jealous of a lot of the things he was getting, but at the same time, he was jealous of me of a lot of the different credit that I was getting because of my background. A lot of people wanted to talk to me. A lot of people, even 19, 20 years later when I retired, I can honestly say that I can't think of one day that went by my days as a police officer in which somebody didn't ask me about my days as a Raider. Whether it was like, what was it like playing with Tim Brown, or people couldn't believe it. Like, you mean to tell me you played, actually suited up, and you were on the field for 64 plus games with the Raiders in the NFL? Yes. So wait, help me understand this. So you actually were catching balls and running down and yes, I was active. I was playing. I was on the field. I was one of the players. They couldn't fathom that, you know. And so it's just like, well, why are you here? Well, because I've always dreamed of being a police officer. It was very strange, you know. I mean, how people just could not accept the fact that that no, this is part of my destiny. Honestly, this is part of my plan. You know, and so speaking of everything, you have to learn the hard way out there in the streets. It was mind blowing how my road or route as a young police officer coming up was different than Dan's. Every time I look around, it just seemed like he had this personality like, oh, this is the best gig in the world. There's nothing difficult about this, and I'm loving life. And I'm like, dude, I'm ready to freaking call it quits. This stuff is difficult, man. I mean, I'm all these calls that I'm getting, and I'm like, I'm not quite knowing what's going on. But in hindsight, that's typical for every rookie officer. But for Dan, he was having fun. I remember what his secret was. I think that he had just this jovial personality, and he loved making people laugh, and he loved entertaining people. I remember covering him on a call where there was a group of young kids and stuff like that. You know, good kids. They were really, really good kids, and you can kind of tell that they were innocent and just genuine good kids and stuff. You know, and so one of them made some type of funny comment. He's like, oh, okay, you think you're the funny guy, huh? And then he tossed him his cuffs. And Dan tossed him the guy his cuffs. He's like, oh, go ahead, put those on you. And everybody's like laughing and stuff. He's like, what? You're going to make me put these on? Like, yeah, put those on. And then he was just kind of like, all right. And he was like, all right, now get over here. Get in that car. It was all fun and games, I guess, and just kind of kept everybody like low key and, you know, I mean, kind of eddies and stuff. And it was kind of funny. I looked around like, wow, this is okay. I don't know who your field training officers were who taught you how to do it like that, but I know that mine, they weren't having that. If I didn't put my hands on whatever suspect and do it myself and just kind of gain control over the suspects that we were dealing with, I was getting my butt chewed. But granted, there's a big difference from dealing with your local drunk guy who's acting a fool and looked or very unpredictable than dealing with these kids who were kids, but it was like a group of them, you know, at that time. So I don't know. I mean, nothing bad happened, so I think that he knew what he was doing, and that's the type of respect that every police officer should have for their coworker. Is that you know, you just have to have their back. You know, unless you're their field training officer and you're, you know, and you don't see anything that's compromising to their safety, I guess, you know, I mean, you can't go on every single call, like, you know, analyzing people and their styles of policing, because you can't do that. You're going to rub people the wrong way. And each police officer has to have their own style and their own ability to kind of do their things the way they see fit. You know, but definitely if it crosses the line, you it's time to step on in. And you know, fortunately for me, I was able to see Dan just kind of get control over his calls, but in his own way. And you know, and I respected him for that. And we had fun. Him and I, we'd have these good days like that, and then we'd have these really awful days where him and I were fighting with each other at lineup. One time, I don't even know what the topic was about, but Dan said something to me, and I definitely wasn't having it. And him and I are like yelling and screaming at each other at a lineup with, like, say, picture like 12, 15 other people, whether it's dispatchers, sergeants, lieutenants, and other officers, all dressed up and listening to lineup. And here I am screaming at this guy, and he's screaming at me back and forth. But then by the time I realized I fell for his trap. I'm like, oh my God, that's just Dan being Dan. He loves pushing buttons, and here I am. I fell for it again. You know, so that was our thing. There'd be times when we'd do calls together where he'd bring up man, do you remember all these fond memories? And we talk about that, and just your academy mate just means something more to you than just like someone who you didn't go to academy with, to be honest with you. And just like, you couldn't stay mad at this guy. And I didn't think that he was actually mad at me either. It was just what we carried over from our academy days. It was our bittersweet rivalry that we had, a sibling rivalry, I guess is what you would call it. So, but other people didn't quite understand that. They thought that if I kind of came at him kind of wrong, they thought, how could Kenny talk like that to freaking Dan Niemi, man? He's like so awesome. He's so cool, friendly, and all that stuff. So after a while, you know what? I just said, you know what? That's his thing. He's playing the cards that were dealt to him, and he's playing them very, very well. And you know what? I got to respect the guy. I'm going to put my head down, and I'm going to focus on what I need to do to get better. At that time, I've always wanted to get a stolen vehicle pin. And like I was saying, the only way to get that is there's 3 different ways. You can come across a chop shop where this warehouse is full of, or this person's yard is full of these stolen vehicles that they're tearing apart, and they're kind of stole them, and they stored them in their yards and stuff. If you come across that and you bust everybody and you take that operation down, that's how you can get your 10851 pin. And then one of the other main ones was to pull over 3 rolling stolens, what they called, someone who's actually driving the stolen vehicle, and get those 3 people in custody, and then a total of 12 vehicle recoveries is how you would get your pin. And again, I know it may seem like I'm bitter about it, but I've gone to therapists, and so I've gotten to be able to kind of deal with it a lot more. I accept it a lot more. I don't know how he got that 10851 pin. His name was on the plaque. I still to this day don't understand that, how he got it. And but anyway, I'll leave that alone. So I just said to myself, I'm going to get mine on my own. And so I busted my butt on being proactive and all that stuff, and worrying about myself and not worrying about Niemi in that type of sense. So, fast forward to everything, and there's still some calls and stuff that we would go on, and then one minute he's talking trash, the next minute he's nice. He started getting a little bit bolder and stuff as he was going from different shifts and stuff, and other people were really kind of like filling his ego with everything. And so one minute he'd be like this really brash older brother and stuff like that, and just talk trash, and you'd have to just kind of walk by, and just kind of just leave it alone. And so one time we were on the same shift, and that became really, really difficult because, I'm seeing him every day now, every time we're working. And so I think there was just too many times where we were starting to get in each other's heads and stuff. And a lot of the command staff was just kind of like, what's going on with these two? And I'm quite sure they blamed me for everything that was going on. So one day after our shift was over with, it was customary that we would all, that the group would all, it was an overnight shift. So once the shift was over with, we'd all go to breakfast together. And, so that particular time I was gassing up because our shift was about to end. I was gassing up, and one of the officers I ran into as he was gassing his car up too said, "Hey, Kenny, you gonna go to the breakfast today, the team breakfast?" And I said, "You know what? I don't think so, because me and Niemi, we haven't really been clicking very well lately. I mean, he's been being a jerk, and him and I have been getting into it. So I think it's just going to be best for me just to kind of like separate myself from that for right now." And the officer's like, "Oh, come on, don't let that freaking discourage you. Just ignore him. Just go, man. This is for build camaraderie. It's fun, and it's kind of there for us to kind of unwind after a hard week of work and all that stuff, and you'll have fun." I'm just, I don't know. Okay, I'll think about it. Oh, okay, all right. So I leave, and I gas up, and I go, and I see on my way in, I see one of the dispatchers on my way into our pit, where we park our cars, and I see one of the dispatchers heading out. And her and I were both friends. She's like, hey, so you gonna go to Plowman's or whatever the restaurant was that for the team breakfast? And I said the same thing that I said to the officer. I'm saying, well, I'm kind of thinking about it, but I don't want to risk getting into it with Niemi. I mean, I kind of feel kind of bad and all that stuff, getting into all these arguments with him. And I don't want people to think badly of me, because, it's not like that. And I just don't want to get into it with this guy at all, and the dispatchers say, oh, Jesus, that's so silly. It's just there's gonna be a whole bunch of other people there. Just don't worry about it. Just come on. It's a family vibe, and it's good to see everybody there, and it builds camaraderie. And I said to myself, I think you're right. Yeah, I'm gonna go. She's like, yeah, you shouldn't let anybody just get in your mind like that and all that stuff. It's gonna be fine. I'm like, okay, all right. So I got all dressed and everything, and I go to get in my personal car, and I drive, and I meet everybody there. I walk in, and lo and behold, there's Dan just in the middle of everybody, just doing his thing, talking stocks, talking business, real estate, all that different things, stuff like that. And people are listening and loving it and all that stuff, because he had that type of personality, and I'm just like, okay, all right, cool. I'm just hungry. I'm just going to worry about me and just getting some food and stuff like that and just enjoy the moment. So, we're all sitting in, kind of getting all settled in and all that stuff. And so the officer I was telling you about, who I saw at the gas where we were gassing up, is sitting next to Dan and stuff. So those two get into it. Dan brought up something about that this officer didn't know anything about what he was talking about with the real estate, and which was very wrong for him to do that, because this officer takes real estate very, very seriously. He thinks he knows all about the housing market, interest, and all that different thing. And he feels very knowledgeable about it. But he found himself in a back and forth debate with Nels, and it was pretty intense. So everybody was eating their food, and then they kind of like stopped for a minute, and these two are like going at it back and forth. And before you know it, the officer was so upset by how Dan had got him all riled up. He was so upset. He's like, okay, here, I'm out of here. He threw his money down and stuff like that. I'll see you guys later. I'll see you guys next week. I'm out of here. And everybody's like, hey, where are you going? And he didn't say anything. He just stormed out. I was like, okay. Everybody's like, whoa, what happened there? And Dan has this look of just pure joy on his face and stuff like that. So we finished eating everything. And so as the day goes on, he turns to the dispatcher, who I saw pulling into the pit, and said, hey, what do you got going on this weekend? And the dispatcher said something along the line, I don't know, I'll probably go out and do this or whatever, and probably go out with some of my girls and stuff, hang out and stuff, because it's been such a long weekend. And Dan said something along the lines, was like, I would love to party with you in some type of way, and I'll leave it there. It was it shouldn't have been said, put it that way. And she's like, wait, what did you just say? She's like, well, no, I'm just saying, I hear you like to party, so I'd love to be there too. And she's like, all like red-faced and kind of like taken aback, like how he was talking to her, and he's just like, and she's like, you need to apologize for that. That was wrong. She was like, and he's like, no, that wasn't wrong. I mean, hey, if you like to party, you like to party. And then started like doing some dance and stuff like that. And she's like, oh my God. And her friends were like, well, Dan, stop that. She starts crying. She gets up and she storms out. Her friends jump up, say, hey, wait. And they go and they run after her. And then, to try to calm her down and all that stuff. And then you just see her grabbing her purse or her coat or whatever that was hung up and stuff. And then her and her girlfriends, they walk her out and she's gone. Everybody's like looking, and there's Dan. He's got this big old cheesy grin on his face, like, yep, yeah, my job here is done. And he finishes food, and I just looked up and was like, I had the biggest smile on my face, because I just said, see, I tried to tell you guys, this dude is evil. And then, but that was a great moment. That was his thing. He loved it. He loved the debate. He loved to get in these brain type lock head to head like Ram versus Vram. Okay, and it didn't matter what the subject matter was. He could not have a clue what it was that other person was talking about. But I guarantee you, he would sit down in front of that person, and it would be on like a chess match. And Dan would not stop until that person was like, holy smokes, either threw in the towel or just like was so frustrated that they got up and they left. So I remember those things about Dan. And do I feel bad about sharing that stuff? No, because at his memorial at the church where we his funeral, his family member, his brother, got up and pretty much said the same things. Dan was a jerk, but that's what he loved. He loved to push people's buttons, and everybody laughed. And once I saw that, I knew that was just Dan's personality. And and I think that it's only fair that the officers hear those stories too, because you're not going to find these officers who are just these A+ personalities, people. It's hard being a cop, and if that's your way to make it work, is to kind of like let off some steam by getting in debates with people, then you got to do what you got to do. And maybe that's the only real way that Dan could kind of get into his comfort zone, especially coming from a completely different profession, and that just worked for him. And it took a lot of people, a minute to kind of acquire that about him and kind of understand. For me, it was easy for me to see and just kind of look the other way or make it work, because I just knew that's just Dan. That's part of his makeup. I think things went bad kind of towards the end there, because this is where I feel, like I said, I feel somber, because it starts making me remember about how things ended with Dan and I never did get a chance to apologize to him, because we'd had these days still, and our routine just continued even after we went to a different shift with each other. We were still working together on calls. So there would be times when I would run a license plate, and then I'd get this message from Dan, a text message, or like a MDT message from our computer from Dan saying, "Dude, why'd you run that plate? You should know who it's registered to, and just to be a jerk." I'm just like, what? I need to run that plate because in that particular case, I had gotten sent to the AMR, our emergency services ambulance service over there in San Leandro at the time was AMR, and one of their cars, I think, one of their rigs was the victim of a hit and run. So at that time, I gave them that plate of the rig that got hit, and then for the call for record keeping purposes. And then I asked them to run another plate, and this was a suspect vehicle. And so that's how I knew it in my head. If for some reason I think Dan thought that I was asking for the registration information for the ambulance, and so he sends me a text saying, "Dude, are you brain dead? It's registered to AMR. What do you think?" And I was just like, and I was confused. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I didn't get into it with him or anything like that, but I'm just like, what is he talking about? So he'd always make these comments, just out of these random comments out of the blue when I'm out there trying to, focus on my job. And it was just never easy for me, but apparently he had such the comfort zone thing going on that he had nothing else better to do than to give other people a bad time. So after a while, I started outgrowing that, and I was starting to get a little bit mad. So I was literally ignoring him whenever I'd work with him. This one time, we go to this burglary call, and it's just him and I, and the house had gotten broken into, and basically it's him and I searching the house together to make sure that it's secure, that there's nobody else inside, and we reverted back into our academy days where we were searching rooms and stuff for training purposes there. And so him and I immediately put our differences on the back burner, and we just connected again, like our academy mates, like we were in the academy, and it was beautiful, like we were back being brothers and stuff. He'd go one way, I'd go the other way. We both like go in conjunction. He'd do his quick search, and then I'd come in, I'd do a secondary search, and then we look at each other, you ready to move? And then we tap each other, we move on to the next and stuff. On those calls, most time than not, the suspect's already gone, and it's just the kind of like the formality of making sure. So you can kind of do that with 2 officers and stuff. And if you come across something like that's amiss, or you hear a noise, and that's when you stop and you report that, or the dispatch, and then they'll send you some more officers. But for the most part, you can kind of clear a house on that type of scenario with just 2 officers. So it was just him and I, and it was just like, it was fantastic the way we were communicating with each other. He showed me nothing but respect. I showed him nothing but respect, and it was like almost like forgetting all the bad stuff that had happened between him and I. The arguments and back and forth and all that stuff was just not existent at that time. So once we clear the house, we get out there, and he's like, dude, we did a great job in there. I'm just, I know, wasn't that cool? He's like, yeah, it was pretty cool. And I'm just like, you know what, man, this is so crazy. Look how well we're getting along. You know, we need to do the better job of getting things back together between you and I. And he's like, Kenny, you know what? You're right. I'm going to make an extra effort to really, really get along and, kind of put things aside and stuff. And let's really get our friendship back together, back how it was. And we hugged, and we was like, okay, you take care. He jumped in his car. I can't remember who was the primary officer, but we both he jumped in and left the scene, or I jumped in and left the scene. But it was, we left with a warm smile on each other's faces. And it was a fantastic moment, you know. And so we get an early morning burglary call, and it's on my beat. So, that night we were working the midnight shift, and so the dispatch sent me, obviously, because I'm the primary officer. The day shift hasn't broken their lineup yet, so I get there. I kind of assess the scene. I kind of see it's a cold burglary. It's one of our like the Caterpillar tractor stores or whatever that was in the city, so had gotten broken into. So it was a burglary slash theft from the auto burglaries, as well from the tractors and all that stuff. So it's pretty extensive a scene. You know, you have to dust for fingerprints, and the yard is like huge. So you have the yard where the tractors are, they got broken into, that needs to be processed, and then you have the building where someone smashed through the window, and then they got either they were going through rummaging through the interior of the building to see what they can get that way too. So each place, the yard and then the building has like some potential to have fingerprints. So with that, you call the technician, and they come out there with their tech kit, and they dust for fingerprints, and they kind of process the scene. They look for surveillance cameras and stuff, and all those different things, and just process the scene. So, but with the shift ending, the midnight shift ending, what you would normally do is ask the dispatch to stack the daytime tech to come out there, and then, because they're just starting their shift, and then they have their whole shift to process the scene, rather than in comparison to the midnight shift tech who's just getting ready to get off. So it's customary, and it's just goes without saying that you would have dispatch stack the tech, or for the daytime. What Dan was trying to do, I don't know, but he sent me some some messages on the NDT saying, hey, Kenny, just so you know, you're going to have to have dispatch stack the daytime tech. And I responded back like, yeah, really, I never knew that. No, I didn't think I was going to have to. And then And then Dan's and I was being funny, and I thought Dan was going to be funny too, but he came right back, and he was just like, well, I'm standing here with some other officers, and we all don't think you're smart enough to know that. And I'm just like, I was waiting again for him to joke. Like, no, dude, I'm just kidding. I was just giving you a bad time. And then he came with something else, and then I'm just like, wait, what the heck is wrong with you? And so he said something else that was rude, and then I said, this is where it gets kind of heartbreaking and stuff, because this happens on the eve of his death. So it gets kind of hard for me to talk about because, it's for obvious reasons and stuff. So here I am in this another back and forth with Dan, and it's just. And this is a big one too. This isn't one of our like cutesy, back and forth where we're just being funny and everybody's laughing type stuff. This is like really, really brutal things that he's saying that's questioning my intelligence and stuff. And then he's firing right back and makes it even worse because I know the type of setting he's around, because like I said, everybody for whatever reason gravitated to this guy, and he in a lot of different ways he was a geek, but for whatever reason everybody loved him. And so I can imagine the people he was with, and I can imagine the stuff that they were saying, and I'm quite sure it was very rude, unnecessary type stuff. So I had to go strong too. So I said to this guy, I'm like, dude, what the F is your problem? Are you freaking bipolar or what? And then he said something, and it's such a while ago, I can't remember exactly what I said. I'm just like, well, the reason why I'm not getting all these assignments like you are is because I don't kiss butt like you do. And then he said something else, and then I said, well, he's like, what are you talking about? I've earned everything that I've gotten. And I say, you're on drugs or something like that. It's like, I'm still trying to wonder how you get your 10851 pin, the pin I was telling you about that had his name on the plaque on the wall, for a 10851 pin when you didn't even have one felony car stop. And then just a side note, those NDT messages at that time were very new. It wasn't exclusive, and it wasn't like high tech by any means. So if you were sending messages to an individual officer, everybody who had access to NDT system could read it. So so many different people were like chiming in like, oh, Kenny, whoa. It's just like LOL type stuff and just back and forth. And then it didn't hit me at the time. It was like, what are you doing? People are listening to this conversation, and there again, it carries on the whole, my image of being the jerk. I'm the bad one because he's the all-American boy, and here I am, like, talking trash to him. It's just doing nothing but feeding the fire. But I was so wound up and so mad, and that I just unleashed. And so thankfully, it became time for, or you can hear the day's shift kind of hit the air, and then so that kind of, and then you can kind of hear dispatch sending the daytime tech out towards me. So that kind of effectively ended the battle on the MDT system. And when I say MDT system, it's the mobile data terminal. So basically you have your little computer inside your cop car, and you're typing away, and you have your screen, your monitor there, your screen. So everything you type is just your computers on your screen. You see them now everywhere. But that was back then when they first started and everything. So it was a new system. So, but that effectively put it into that, because now I had to worry about, when the daytime officer was just sent to my scene, I had to kind of put that on side and get ready to meet up with the officer and go from there. So thankfully that changed the tone of everything, and I was able to leave that alone. The problem comes in where, and this is where I haven't really shared this to very many people, but the problem comes in is that once I got out of the car And I got out and I had to walk around because it was daytime at that time and it was outside, obviously. And I had to get out of the cop car and I was so wound up and I was so upset, so stressed out by what just happened between Dan and I. I'm pacing back and forth and walking, and I think it would be safe to say I might have teared up a little bit and stuff because, when you get so mad and angry, you're there's nothing you can. You're not at like a gym where you can kind of punch the punching bag and all that stuff, and you can't get it out that way, so you just kind of have to sit it in. And the reason why I'm stalling is because it's very, very hard to say, so I said to myself, I just said to myself, you know what? I'm so freaking tired of that dude. I freaking hate his butt. I wish something would happen to him to where I don't have to deal with him anymore because he's freaking driving me crazy. And, so, woo! I don't know, man. That was kind of tough. You know what? Kshedduncuffed is going to have to take a quick break, but guess what? Hang in there. We're going to be right back, okay? Kshedduncuffed. We'll be back. Kshed Uncuffed. Guess what? I am back, and that was harder than I thought. Thank you guys for your understanding, and it's wow. 20 years of being a police officer, and I do have my memories, and I continued forward. For my academy mate, Dan Niemi, he brought a lot of special memories to the table. He was a story writer too. One time at training camp. One time at the academy, him and I are sitting there talking, and it was like during lunch, and he was asking about a couple stories I had written, and he's just like, dude, I'm a story writer too. He's like, really? He's like, yeah, I'm working on this one, and it's about society, and there's like a meteor or something like that coming, and it's right during the time when society's about to destroy each other anyway, because a couple of countries are fighting, and humanity's about to die and die off. This meteor is coming at the same time. So basically, everybody, they had time to kind of come together and build this big old spaceship, and it launched from the Earth just in time. Everybody who could fit on it got in, and then it launched just as this meteor comes and crashes and smashes Earth. And luckily all this huge mass amount of people were saved though, and and on its way to this new planet that was mapped out and discovered, and so everything's going to be fine. Society's going to start back up, and humanity's going to thrive again. So en route to this new planet, someone gets into it with another person, and then it turns into an escalated fight, and it's physical. Other people try to come and try to help, and then they get slapped and pushed and stuff. So it turns into this all big old brawl. Pretty soon, the whole spaceship is fighting each other, and then it gets so bad and out of control that the person flying the thing gets hit or shot, and then that person dies, and then the spaceship goes barreling down towards the abyss and destroyed, killing everybody on board. And I was like, holy smokes, man. It's just, I mean, they couldn't make it work. And he's like, no, that's the whole point of my story, that society is doomed to fail. And it was so mind-blowing. It's almost like he came up that with the top of his head. We weren't even talking about movies, and then that just came up out of the blue, and I was just like blown away, because I had some stories here and there, but my stories were just kind of like a couple of funny things here and there, and just kind of entertaining that way. But this was a whole nother level, and he didn't get a chance to follow through on his dreams to move that route to make his movie happen, and teach the world how to get along. That was, I think, was the whole gist of him telling me that story, is that the world needs to get better at getting along. So that's how charming this guy was. One minute he's this philosopher who's gonna save the world, then the next minute he's this completely different person who's part of the good old boy system, who wants to get rid of all people who don't think or look and act like they do. And it was like, what the heck? So yeah, I had to take a quick moment, because I'm torn. One minute I want to love the guy, and that what happened that night, and I think you guys can see where I'm going, is that after that last brouhaha him and I got into on the MDT system, and I said what I said, and I'm still mad at myself for ever saying those words. 10 hours later, he was shot and killed on the streets, responding to a call. And he didn't even have to be working that night, the part that makes it even worse. They were short bodies, and then they needed somebody to come in, and so he took an overtime shift, and he was working that night. And so fate was just, I don't know what was going on, but he shouldn't even have been there. And not that any other officer should have been there as well. But, it's a very, very unfortunate incident and stuff. So, but at the same time, it also goes with what I was saying about how he was out in the streets. The number one golden rule for any police officer is to never, ever turn your back on any suspect at all. It doesn't matter what they look like, color, gender, any class or whatever, or if they're homeless or not homeless or whatever. It does not matter. You do not turn your back on a suspect. And unfortunately, that's what he did that night, and he was gunned down by the suspect. And I just remember my baby, our firstborn, was only like 2 months old when that day happened on the 25th, and I just remember her falling asleep on my chest, and I'm like downstairs, and it was like midnight, something, a little bit past midnight, and the phone rings, and I was like startled because I had fallen asleep, and I'm like, have my baby on me, and we're like, she's all huddled in, nuzzled all in there and stuff, and it was just like, whoa, what the heck? And I wake up and I go and answer the phone, and the sergeant had this dreary tone to his voice, and he's like, Kenny, I had to tell you that Dan Niemi was shot and killed earlier tonight, and I can't even really explain it. It was like the worst moment ever, and I swear to God, I thought like this was like the Twilight Zone. Like it was just none of what I was hearing on the phone made any sense. And I was in shock. It was fuzzy. Nothing felt real. And then I just remember waking up my wife and saying, "Here, take the baby. I just got a phone call. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I couldn't even put into words to tell her what was going on. Something, but I have to get to the hospital because they were saying he was at Eden Hospital." And I said, I have to get to the hospital. And she's like saying, what's going on? What's going on? I don't know. Maybe he got shot and he's in the hospital and they were working on him and all that. I don't know yet, but I have to get down there. And I got dressed as quickly as possible, jumped in my car, and I went down there to the hospital and went in, and this is to the day I should have done this. I had to see him, and there he was on the table. he was gone. He was still in his uniform, obviously, and still had the tube in his mouth, and he was gone. So anytime you're talking about police officers, and people have to understand the type of job that these guys have. I will go to bat against anybody out there who tries to come at the police the way they are in a unreasonable manner. I remember when I was on the streets and stuff. There was an incident actually that I remember hearing about where a dude, it happened in San Francisco or around in that area. So the dude's driving along the freeway, comes up to a car where there's a female driver, and he's trying to flirt with the driver. She doesn't want to have anything to do with them, and then he pulls back up to her, and this time he flashes a gun at her. She freaks out, and he starts kind of like brandishing this weapon and kind of threatening her in a threatening manner. She freaks out. She punches it. He follows her. She's trying to get away. He's on her butt, and she's calling 911 at the same time. I got a guy behind me. He has a gun. I don't know what's going on here. And then and so the police get the call. Obviously, they're speeding. They're trying to get there as soon as possible. They do get there. They see him. They see the car. And then when he sees the police, the chase is on. He hits the exit, and he goes through speeding through the town, just blowing lights, all that stuff. The cops are in pursuit. They already know that he has a gun in the car and that he, threatened someone with the gun. So they already know they have their probable cause. He's fleeing from them, so they have the justification to go after him. They get behind him. The chase is on through the side streets and stuff. They were able to kind of box him in a little bit. So he stops the car, reverses it, smashes into one of the police cars, can't get out. And then I think he tried to smash up going front ways and couldn't get in that way. But the police, they hold their ground. They order him out of the car at gunpoint. He finally comes to his senses and stuff, and he gets out of the car with his hands up. But then for whatever reason, last minute, he decides to jump back in the car where these officers already know he has a gun. And, so they shot at him, and they killed him. And that's how the whole call came out. Pretty much that's the gist of the call. And then so bless her heart, his mom went into the media and went on the news and stuff saying, they did not have to kill my baby. I don't know. He didn't do anything to those police. And, that's mom. So I can't, obviously I'm not going to, go after mom in any type of way, because every mom is going to be there for their child no matter what they do. But at the same time, city leaders and other church leaders, all that stuff started rallying behind mom and trying to say, they wanted to start a protest that these officers killed this man unjustifiably. And I just could not believe it. I'm like, did you guys read the police report? Did you hear the witness statements? And it's just mind blowing how that the police could be looked upon as the bad people in that type of scenario, and that's the type of world we live in right now. Our brother in arms, Dan Niemi, died in the line of duty, and left his wife, left his stepson, left his daughter, all without their loved one, and he'll never be able to go back and see them again. And that's just hard for police officers to accept, so just think about that out there for a minute, okay? All right, these guys and girls are sworn to protect, and it's a different breed of people who have to be police officers, especially nowadays and stuff. And so that's one of the main reasons why I'm not too happy with what ended up happening with our at my police department when after that happened. Because not only do we have to worry about the people out in the streets trying to freaking take us out, what ended up happening at San Leandro PD is unacceptable by any means, because what ended up happening is that during obviously any situation like this, they're gonna look into all the different resources and the computer and all the different. They're gonna look into what might have happened, what could have caused this person to shoot and kill a police officer. So they they got warrants, I'm sure, obviously for if that's necessary, to get access to Dan's computer records, phone records, all that different thing to try to see, hey, what's the connection here with the killers and the officer who got killed, So obviously, what do you think they come across? They come across the conversation that him and I had just not too long before that, and they can see it's not very pleasant. I have some pretty bad things to say to him, and he's firing back at me, but all that doesn't matter. And they tried to look at that to try to see if that tied into what might have happened, because they went even further than that particular day. They looked prior to that, some of the traffic stops that Dan had been on, and some of the different encounters that he might have people he might have come in contact with prior to that, to try to see if there's any type of connection. And there would just so happen to be a connection on a traffic stop Dan conducted on somebody, and the driver of the vehicle, or one of the people in the car who got identified via their driver's license, turned out to be connected with the shooter as another gang member as well. They're part of the same gang and associated via that. And what the investigators looked into was, again, I was the cover officer for Dan that day, so I covered him as he did that traffic stop, which was a simple non-confrontational traffic stop. I can't remember if the guy ran the light or something, I don't know, but it was just a regular traffic and enforcement stop. And I think Dan gave him a ticket or whatever and stuff, but there was no fallout, nothing happened from it. And all I was just a secondary officer, the cover officer. But these guys tried to put a connection between me and that guy on the traffic stop, because now he's connected with the person who shot and killed Dan, and they were trying to pin me into this whole thing as if I had something to do with Dan getting shot and killed. And I didn't realize that at the time when they called me into the office and they were asking me these real random questions about that guy who Dan pulled over in the traffic stop. I didn't know at the time, but that's what they were doing. They were trying to see what my response was going to be, to see if I had any connection with this dude, as if that was the reason that I my hatred or whatever, my disdain towards Dan was something that carried over, and then I recruited these guys to do what they did in some type of fashion. I'm still pissed to this day. I will never forgive those sergeants and those lieutenants and those San Leandro personnel investigators who even had the gall to go there and even go down that road. Unbelievable. And then the fallout that came from that, just from even though that they were to see that I had nothing to do with it, there was no ties or anything like that, but I was totally written off and given the cold shoulder and blacklisted from that day on, because everybody was so they were all because of what happened, really. It was so bad where I wasn't included on all the different tributes that they had. There was a dinner that there was at Dan's family's that they were having one night at work. Everybody was allowed to go except me. they made a concentrated effort by holding me at work extra overtime so that I didn't get a chance to go. And they used the guise of that. Oh well, we need extra coverage and stuff. And there was when I looked at the shift and the roster that night, there was like 5 extra officers and stuff like that. So I wasn't needed, but that was a way for me to be tied up and not be in a position to where I can go to the memorial dinner that his parents threw for the police officers in honor of Dan that night. That was a time when the Raiders obviously were in Oakland, and I had good connections with the Raiders still at that time. And I reached out because one of the other officers asked me because they were going to do a fundraiser, and they asked me if I could reach out to the Raiders and get some items that could be auctioned off and stuff. So for the fundraiser. And I did, and I didn't even really ask for too much, but the person who responded went way above and beyond. Oh, we can do this for you. I can get you this. We'll submit our own, donation. We'll do this. All these fantastic things that the Raiders were talking about doing, and they were going to be included. They were going to send players to the fundraiser to help raise money too. All these fantastic things that the Raider organization were going to do in honor of Dan. But as soon as the same lieutenants who were in charge of that investigation to see if I had anything to do with the incident found out about it, they X'd it. And all that got canceled. They didn't want to have anything to do with me bringing anything in honor of Dan. And it was very, very blatant. Very blatant, and I don't even know what to say. So, wow. So anyway, I had to kind of wait a few years and stuff for those same people I'm talking about to finally retire. And then once they retired, things started kind of like returning to normal. But prior to that, life for me in San Leandro was nothing short of a nightmare. And so I've had my peaks and valleys as a police officer, but I will know that I never did compromise my values. I never did sell myself out to get anything. I always fought hard and to get where I was, what I earned. And then when I became a training officer, I not only made sure that the officers were trained in the way that, hey, look, we're in the middle of Hayward, which is by rights its own like little Oakland and Oakland. You cannot go out there thinking that things are going to be great and lovey, all kinds of rainbows and unicorns running around, and people are coming up to you out of the blue with cakes and stuff, and they're singing to you, they're giving you this ovation as you drive by. That's just not how it is out there on the streets, especially where that department is located. So whenever I trained the officers, it was always like, hey, look, we're gonna learn the skills that you need to not be overly aggressive. You're going to be even killed. You're going to be a well-rounded police officer. You're going to know how to talk to people, and you're going to know how to handle hot calls, and you're going to know what to do if you do come across that gangbanger from Oakland or whatever who is not going to go out without a fight. You're going to know how to respond, and you're going to know how to get that person in custody using the right amount of force necessary to effect the arrest. At the same time, as I was training, I would tell them, my trainee, stories about all the mistakes and a lot of the mistakes that I made out there as well, just so they can kind of learn through my stories as well. That wasn't very common for a lot of the FTOs. A lot of FTOs try to pretend like they were above any mistakes, and they were like these godly figures and stuff, and that's just not realistic either. You can't shield these kids from how things are going to be, and you need to tell them some of the knuckleheaded stuff that you did that got your butt in trouble from your supervisors, but you got in trouble because that's part of the growth process that happens with being a police, growing up into law enforcement. And it's really the only real way, in my eyes, to teach them to know how to have that even kill where they're going to be very prepared for any type of situation that they come across as a law enforcement officer. So with that, I appreciate the phone call or the message that I got as far as like asking my how it was as a police officer. I have my funny stories that like the time I was chasing after a stolen vehicle suspect and fell through a roof. Dad thought it was awesome, gave me a high five and all that stuff, but Mom was hot, just hot. And I ain't talking about like looking good. She was pissed. And thankfully the city, I'm sure, took care of her, their house, and rebuilt it and all that stuff. But now that I have honored my fallen brother, I feel like it's going to be easier for me to share stories that are out there that kind of can give people a little bit of inspiration, because we still need some strong police officers to apply and get back out there and kind of make sure that the society is protected, but protected in the right way, where people know that the police officers are necessary, and but also at the same time to be able to feel comfortable and confident to hold them responsible if they feel like they crossed the line. That's just the way it works. If they feel like they crossed the line, I always tell people, then go to the police department where they work and file a complaint. Don't get into it with them. Don't try to fight. Don't try to ignore them or whatever, because you don't have the right. If you did something, you broke the law, they have the justification to be there for to figure out what's going on. Just show them the type of respect, and the whole thing should be resolved very applicably. So with that, what we're going to do right now is we're going to wrap this bad baby up. Little theme music to go out on a good note. If you guys have any questions for me, go ahead and send me an email to kshedduncuffed@gmail.com. I'm going to get back to you, and we're going to keep this rolling. Episode 5 is going to be coming sometime soon. And guess what? We're going to keep doing it up, all right? Kshedduncuffed. Out.